Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Twilight Kin versus the Forces of Nature. This battle was fought at 2250 points and the scenario was Raze. So first off, let's go through my opponent's army. Sorry about that. So, before I get into it, it looks like I'm about 75 points over, and I can't figure out what's wrong with the army, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Maybe my opponent played a little over. It's not that big of a deal. So starting out, we have the Boulder Guard formation, which involves 2 hordes of Earth Elementals and a Greater Earth Elemental. All of those gain Iron Resolve, which is pretty cool. Then we have 2 hordes of Fire Elementals, followed by 2 hordes of Water Elementals, 2 Druids, one of whom has Surge 7 and a Tree Herder, and then a Beast of Nature with Breath 10 and 2 Greater Fire Elementals. Now, yeah, like I said before, I can't figure out exactly where the points went over here, but otherwise, ignoring that, I think it's definitely a start to an Elementalist. I think a lot of people that want to run pure Elementals sort of start with this idea where just bring 2 of all of them and see how good it is. But once it gets reformed, I think that dropping the Water Elementals is probably the correct choice, or the Fire, like one or the other. Both be to make the list legal and to get enough points for some better units. Both of those Druids should definitely have Surge in this kind of a list, and the Beast of Nature with no wings and breath attack just doesn't seem worth it to me. I would drop it entirely. And lastly, I would swap those Fire Elementals, the greater ones, to being either Air Elementals or making those Beasts of Nature, finding the point somehow to make them fly and giving them Lightning Bolt and the Vicious 7 and all that. I'd also say that the Shambler formation could be really good in here, the +1 speed on all of them, and then the Forest Warden, I think it's called, that might be wrong, the hero for a Shambler, that's a pretty solid piece in my book. So yeah, it's a bit of a rewrite in the list, but the core concept remains. The Boulder Guard are excellent in my opinion, and an army of Elementals could definitely be deadly. Now here is my kin list. It's very similar to the one I ran a couple weeks ago. So, and again, sorry about disappearing like that, but a tree did fall in my car. It's been a real bitch to get it fixed, and then I got the flu, so yeah, just a nightmare. Anyway, I start out with the Gemini formation, which involves 2 Hydrae, both of whom they gain the extra heads rule for one impacts the other one. So if one has taken 7 damage, the other one, or both of those units, will now get +7 attacks. And if one's taken 7, the other's taken 3, now they both get 10 attacks. So they just share each other's weird rule. Followed by that, I have a horde of crossbowmen with the Heart-Seeking Chant. Then I have a regiment of Dark Knights with Caterpillar Potion, 3 Heralds of Woe, or the troops of Heralds of Woe, then a horde of Darkside Chariots with the Dwarven Ale, an ASB with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, Bazuzu, this time I will remember him, and a Dark Lord on Black Dragon with Chalice of Wrath. My allies have swapped up a little bit, but they are very similar in that instead of bringing the Fleabag Cav, I brought the Fleabag Chariots, a regiment of them, which allows me to buy a Goblin Blaster. So that's the army. I don't think that this is anything more than a gimmick list. It's just for fun to mess around a little bit. So yeah, I definitely think it could be done better. I think that there's a lot of weakness in it, like the Gemini Goblin Blaster thing is just a little weird. The Dark Knights should probably just be more chariots, but I don't feel like it. So this is what I brought. Still a pretty fun list in my opinion. Now starting out, let's take a look at the table and explain how Raze works. So Raze is one of the new missions for 2019, I believe. And starting out, you have an objective in the center of the table, right? So pretty standard there. Then, starting with the player who chose sides, you start putting out tokens one by one. So on my side, I'm the one who won the roll-off, so all of my tokens go on my opponent's side of the table, right? I believe they have to be within 6 inches of the we draw that center line a little better. I believe they have to be within 6 inches of the center line, or maybe they have to be exactly 6. Mine are all exactly 6, so I wasn't sure. And I wasn't about to check it out. So starting out, I have 1, 2, and 3 objectives. They are all evenly spaced, so they're more than 12 inches away from any other objectives. And so these are all the primary objectives that I'll be going for. And I'll explain how that works right after I show my opponents, which are these red objectives on the left, the kind of behind that tower, and over here on the right. So all 6 of these objectives, right? So the 3 on my opponent's side of the table, which is all over here, those are worth 2 points to me at the end of the second turn. Starting on the end of the second turn is when I can grab them. So they're not loot, they're victory points, or they're objectives. So you walk over to them, you control them by having the highest unit strength within 3 inches, and then once you control them at the end of the turn, you blow them up. So you gain those 2 victory points, and then that's it. They're immediately removed. Your opponent can contest them, but not control them. And then the center objective is worth 1 VP at the end of the game if you dominate it. So yeah, that's the idea of the list, or of the scenario. Now talking about the table a little bit, starting in the bottom right hand corner, we have a height, I believe we ran it as a height 6 forest. Then above it we have a height 2 hill with a height 1 obstacle attached. Above that we have a height 0 pond, or a height flat pond. Off to the left of that we have a height 4 house right here. Below it we have a height 2 hill. Above that, another height 6 forest. Below that, originally this was supposed to be a height 1 piece of impassable, but my opponent placed a token on it while I wasn't paying attention, so we're just running it as a height 2 hill. And then over here we have a height 6 impassable, so the tower with a height 1 obstacle attached to it. So pretty standard standard table layout, with maybe a bit more impassable than normal, or in a very few woods. But oh, and I forgot to mention this, there's another height flat piece of terrain in my deployment zone. But yeah, this was what we were dealing with. I know that there are trees and forests somewhere in this store, but they're stored away somewhere, and I couldn't be bothered to ask. So anyway, moving forward onto the deployment of the army. So starting with my opponent, on the left here we have the first greater fire elemental. Then we have a horde of water elementals. Behind them, the beast of nature with breath 10. Then a horde of fire elementals. Then back here we have the first druid. This one does not have surge. Then in front of that druid we have the first horde of the boulder guard. Next to them, the greater earth elemental. Now I know my opponent actually has a better model for this, but he forgot it at home, so instead he just pulled one of his earth elementals and put it down. I think that works just fine. Then off to the right of that, we have the second horde of earth elementals. To the right of that, we have the second horde of fire elementals, the second horde of water elementals with the druid with surge 7 behind them. And finally, the last greater fire elemental. So a mirrored deployment by my opponent, running down the line. I'm not exactly sure about this, but there isn't a lot of rough terrain in the middle of the table, or something that Pathfinder can abuse in the middle of the table. So I guess this is fine, but I probably would have bunched up maybe a little bit more, or run like the battle group strategy where you split your army into pieces. Just because we're running pretty much all the way across the table, or we're running the entire width of the table. And since I'm playing an elite kin list, and a shooting based one at that, I think that maybe that would behoove my opponent to spread out a bit more. But anyway, moving on to the kin. Starting off, we have 1, 2, 3 Heralds of Woe. The Empire Dust chariots that never get to be played as Empire Dust. This is my horde of Darkside chariots with the Headstrong Brew. This little this little Dryad model. So I said I remembered to put Pazuzu out on the table. Not that I remembered Pazuzu's model. I definitely just sort of threw this together. Again, I've been pretty sick lately, and with my car, everything's just been a nightmare trying to get back to work and all this. So I just grabbed this same box that was missing the Pazuzu in the first place, and luckily someone let me borrow a random model. So I did that. Then we have the Regiment of Dark Knights. So I want to call them, what are they? Are they called Dark Nuts in Zelda? Ugh, so weird. Anyway, Regiment of Dark Knights there with the Caterpillar Potion. Then next to them we have the Horde of Archers or Crossbowmen, and behind them the ASB with the Banner of the Griffin, or not Banner of the Griffin, Loot of Insatiable Darkness. Then over here on my left flank, but to the right of all that stuff, we have a suspiciously ogre-themed regiment of goblin chariots. I actually could have brought more Empire Dust or Tomb King chariots, but that would have got real confusing, so I just threw these out real quick. Then behind them we have my Black Dragon Lord, and then right here both of the Hydra, and behind it the Goblin Blaster. So pretty standard layout. Maybe things are a little tight on this side of the table. I like having my Black Dragon by the Hydra just to make sure that they're inspired, because they very quickly take wounds. But I think the Goblin Chariots are definitely too close, and I should in the future try to run them on the other side of the table with all the other chariot goodness. So anyway, moving on to turn one. So turn one, and Kin win the roll-off. Yeah, Kin definitely win the roll-off here. Most of the army advances forward just to get into range of shooting. My opponent decided to vanguard forward with the Tree Herder here, which is probably a mistake because it makes it so my Archer Horde now have a target that they don't have to move and shoot. Granted, it is defense 6, but I mean, this entire army is at least defense 5, and you know, the center here is all defense 6 with Iron Resolve. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, it gives me a target a little too soon. So I move forward with some of the army. You can see that on the right flank, or on my right flank, the Heralds are moving forward, just getting ready to swing around and grab this objective. It's very difficult for my opponent to get to, as he's deployed pretty far away from it. I swing up with Pazuzu here, and I make a slight mistake, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, Pazuzu's just moving forward to threaten these elementals. I mean, Pazuzu's not the biggest threat, but just flying over them, killing off druids, making these guys have to turn around, turning off the breath attack on the fire elementals, could be good. And yeah, I don't move forward with any of my center, just because the chariots and the archers don't have to draw line of sight to this guy. I think the chariots he has cover against, but I didn't want to move them too much, or maybe I just got lazy. And then the knights don't want to move at all because I'm just barely out of this thing's charge range already, and I have caterpillars, so I don't really care. On the left-hand side, this proxy base is now the Black Dragon. It's weird because I have a neoprene mat that I play with in my games later in the week that I play on Fridays and on Tuesdays a lot of the time. And my mat, that dragon, is a little top-heavy or a little front-heavy, but it doesn't fall over. And this mat, it just would not stay up. So anyway, it's a proxy base for right now. That's the dragon. Behind the dragon, you can see the Goblin Chariots have just stayed put, or no, they move forward a little bit just to get their shots off. And then I have both the Hydra and the Goblin Blaster just hanging out. The only shooting that my opponent has is this Greater Fire Elemental and this Beast of Nature, which, now that I think about it, he might have played as if it had Fly as well. So yeah, I'm really not getting the points. It's probably just a simple miscalculation. But anyway, it's not a lot of shooting. If it shoots the chariot, or the, I guess it's not a chariot, the monster, the Goblin Blaster right now, I want to make sure that the Hydra gain their bonus attacks, and to do so, he has to walk into the charge range of at least one Hydra, so yeah, that's the plan. It looks like they're facing off into nowhere, but it's just because these models don't play well with others, so they are in fact facing directly forward, as you would think. at the end of the turn, at the end of shooting, I end up doing 5 wounds total to the sorry, grabbing something, to the tree herder here. And that's after, I mean, I went for the Bane Chant from my ASB onto the Archer Horde. I missed it, but yeah, 5 wounds from the archers and the chariots. I think that's all that shot at him. I'll take that. That's fine. That's the start of it, start of a kill. So I'm looking forward to it. And then all of my little horse archer troops all shoot into this greater fire elemental and end up doing 6 wounds there. So that was pretty crazy. Neither of those units break or get wavered, as the tree herder could be wavered, but is not. So anyway, moving forward to turn 1 for the forces of nature. Oh, yep, just a close-up of that guy and that guy. So turn 1 for the forces of nature. This is my opponent just moving forward a little bit. You can see he remains in a battle line here, which I guess is an okay idea. I mean, it's not a bad one, especially again because we're trying to go almost across the entire table. So yeah, I guess maintaining a battle line seems prudent. Right now he's picking up the dice to roll the breath attack onto the Goblin Blaster, I believe. And over here on the right, you can see this fire elemental's a little bit farther forward than the others. And that is because if we look at this, yeah, so this fire elemental ends up getting a charge into Pazuzu. So I really did not think I was within charge range, but I also didn't measure it. So, you know, it's just a dumb mistake. But Pazuzu can probably take a fire elemental, a greater fire elemental's charge once, because it's only 9 attacks on 5s and 3s, and Pazuzu's a 14-16. So yeah, I think I can probably take it. And over here, yeah, those 2 breath attacks definitely destroy the Goblin Blaster, and I end up taking a ton of wounds. So 1 Hydra in the back here takes 10, the front Hydra takes 11. That is a lot. If my opponent had had just a little bit more shooting, maybe the Centaurs or even a Centaur Chief to slap 1 bow wound onto a Hydra, I don't like these odds, as they're definitely... I think they're also the front ones out of the Inspire range for my dragon. So yeah, definitely had to be a bit more cautious in the future. But another thing about this game is that it was definitely a little slow going and I was a little hungry. So anyway, over here you can see my opponent decided to heal the greater fire elemental, hitting both of them, so it's down to 4 wounds, and Pazuzu takes 6 wounds. Now I end up getting wavered here, and I make a mistake on my own turn, which is I play a lot of Abyssals as well, and Pazuzu, I believe, has Fury in Abyssals because all units, unless otherwise mentioned, have Fury, and Pazuzu is not mentioned. So I assumed, oh, Pazuzu just has Fury and Vicious, right? Well, in Twilight Kin, I can't see anything that actually gives Pazuzu Fury, so I also made a bit of a mistake during my turn, so I have to apologize to my opponent for that. If I'm wrong, if Pazuzu does have Fury, feel free to leave it in the comments. I could not find it. So this is the full end of turn 1. Things are a little lukewarm at this point, as all of my shooting just, you know, I only have def 6 or def 5 targets to shoot at, and the forces of nature here just aren't fast enough to engage my archers just yet, so it's a bit of a hold off right now. We'll see turn 2 hold, so turn 2 for the kin. Yeah, this one's pretty normal, which is to say I take my knights and my chariots and get a pretty easy charge into this tree herder. Now that's probably that's not good for the tree herder, because kin knights for some reason have 18 attacks, right? So 18 attacks on 3s, 3s and 4s right now. I also have a Bane Chant right here, and then a further 18 attacks on 4s and 4s. So yeah, that's not great. That's not great. On the left, you can see one of my Hydra gets into the Beast of Nature. That is the one with 11 wounds. I think I heal 1 or 2 of them back, so I'm not quite at 11 anymore. But the one on the back, the 10 wounder, yeah, regen 0 of those, so getting plus 10 attacks there, pretty good. I take my Black Dragon and I just sort of fly to, you know, zone this off. I'm not super worried about this flank, as the only the tree herder right here has surge, and then this druid has surge. This druid does not have surge, so I don't really have to worry about any of these guys getting into me. And I did measure this unit right here, so the greater fire elemental can make the charge into my dragon. I'm not worried about that, but these water elementals cannot, so at least I have that going for me. Now, with the rest of my movement, you can see the goblin chariots just advance a little bit, or maybe, no, I don't think they advance at all. I think they're just firing bows. My elven archers just hold back because that's what they do. My ASB gets into the middle, both to get a Bane Chant onto these horses and to get them inspired as well. Pazuzu countercharges into the greater fire elemental, which is again a mistake, and I take my cav, go over there and grab one of the loot counters because this is my turn too, so I can start grabbing them. The other two are way too defended for me to get to. I mean, this one on the left, I think my opponent has what is that, 3, 6, 9 unit strength within range, and then the other one has 6 unit strength. That's not pretty. So I'll just have to content myself by grabbing one real early. And moving forward, yeah, it looks like that guy, that was at 11, now it's at 8. So I heal, you know, a couple wounds, I heal 3. So, but still, that's what's that, 23 attack Hydra? That's pretty nuts. And right here, yep, just showing off this very illegal combat. I do regen 3 of my wounds off of with Pazuzu, so that's nice. And this charge could be an overcommit by sending the chariots in as well, but I just didn't think that the knights, even if I were to put them on 3s and 3s with the vicious, I mean, a tree herder has, you know, it's an 1820, and I really need it to be gone right now. So I am worried about sending the chariots up so far, but you know, sometimes you just gotta go for it. And here is, oh, that's not, I wonder why this picture exists. Anyway. Oh, it's showing off the shooting. So yeah, I end up taking my my goblin chariots and my lightning bolt dragon, and I fire into this greater fire elemental because it's the only thing in range of the dragon. It is funny, the goblin chariots do nothing, and I end up doing 5 wounds with my 5 lightning bolt. So it's pretty cool. My archer horde have nothing better to do because none of these hordes have advanced over the hill, so I can't really see them. I can see these guys, but they'd have cover and they have iron resolve and they're def 6. So instead I fire into the greater earth elemental in the middle. I do 5 wounds to it, I believe, and then it iron resolves one of them off, going down to 4. So yep, that's shooting. And here is the end of the turn. You can see on the left, my Hydra easily kills off that Beast of Nature. It's actually not that easy because I don't roll that well. But, you know, then my nerve test comes out and it's like an 11. There's no Inspire. So I pop right through them. And I decide to overrun here, mostly because there's no Surge. But it might still be a bit of a mistake as this Fire Elemental can just turn and Breath Weapon me. But I'm better at that than getting charged, so there's that. On the right hand side, you can see the tree herder is gone, which is great. I don't roll very well with the chariots, but the knights on 3s and 3s do very well, and then both of them back up. I think the chariots went 3 and the knights went 2, or maybe they both went 3, but I choose to back up because I do not want to get charged by all these elementals. Some of them will still be able to make it, maybe the fire elementals, maybe the water elementals, but there is a fence right here, so they will be hindered on that charge. The really important thing is to get out of this earth elemental charge with my opponent, or which my opponent had set up, so I had to kill and then roll a 3 to get back. So these guys, I guess both of them rolled a 5+, so pretty good there. And finally on the far right, you can see Pazuzu goes into this fire elemental, greater fire elemental. I do a couple wounds, but not enough to pop it, and that'll be that. Moving on to turn 2 for the elementals. So starting on the left, you can see this greater fire elemental turns to face my Hydra. That seems like a smart move. And the water elementals end up getting into my dragon. Now, I think that this is a case of sloppy measurement. It's either sloppy measurement by my opponent, because I don't think he measured from his direct center, or maybe, I mean, friggin' 3/4 of my dragon is in front of the base, so it's easy to mess it up. Or I messed up my measurement and I just ended up closer than I thought I was. But either way, I'm taking water elementals to the front of a dragon. It's not the scariest thing, as they only hit me on 4s. They only have crushing 1, so 18 attacks on 4s and 4s. It's like 4 or 5 wounds to the dragon, and the dragon is an 18/20, so it's a little worrisome just because why allow it at all? But at the same time, whatever. The other elementals just sort of advance forward. I'm not sure why my opponent advanced this far forward here. Maybe to threaten my Hydra? But that Hydra, it seems like it has an easy flank there. I probably would have held back a little bit more. But anyway, the Earth Elementals cross the wood. It looks like I did 4 wounds, and then the Iron Resolve was for 1. So yeah, 3 wounds on this guy now. Moves forward a little bit. And on the right hand side, things actually get interesting, with the Fire Elementals taking a hinder charge into my Chariots. That seems like an okay move. The Water Elementals actually take the charge into Pazuzu, because the Greater Fire Elemental can just corkscrew, or not full corkscrew, but can just pivot in place and charge into these cab that they can see. So yeah, I was hoping Pazuzu would block that up a bit better than he did, just because, well, I guess in my head I was like, well, this druid only has heal 2, so I've got 6 wounds, 5, and then Pazuzu does like 5-ish wounds, I hope. It's not the best math there, but yeah. Anyway, Greater Fire Elemental goes over there, and things are going a little bit worse on the right hand side for me. And here's the combats. Yep, we got that one. We got that dragon fight. Just messy. Over here, I should have at least made sure with my opponent. So it's definitely on me. And over here, that could go very poorly for me. Right there, that should go poorly. And here is the end of the turn. You can see on the right, the Greater Fire Elemental easily kills off those Heralds of Woe that had raised the token before. The Water Elementals go into Pazuzu, do 7 wounds to me, so that's pretty good, right? Because they've only got 18 attacks, they hit on 4s, so that's 9-ish hits on average, and then crushing 1 brings them to 4s. So yeah, that's a little bit better than average. But then the nerve test comes, and my opponent rolls a 3. So Pazuzu not even wavered this time, which is great because it doesn't have Fury, it looks like. So yep, going in there. The Greater Fire Elementals versus my Chariot Horde managed to do 1 wound, which is pretty poor, but at least it turns off the Thunderous Charge and or the shooting. So, small miracles for that, I guess. And on the left-hand side, yeah, these water elementals, they're not greater, they do a couple wounds to my dragon. I think they actually end up doing 6, so a little bit better than average, but not enough to kill it or even get the boxcar. And the Greater Fire Elemental, it looks like it didn't do any wounds to my Hydra, so I took a few extra wounds on things like Pazuzu and the dragon, but I took way lower than average wounds on the Hydra, so I'll take it. And we move on to turn 3. So turn 3 for Kin. Things are getting a little saucier now because generally speaking, it's the elementals that get all the flanks, right? They've got all the shamble, but my opponent has all the shamblers and none of the surge. So unfortunately, I'm the one that ends up getting all these juicy flanks. So starting on the left-hand side with flank 1, I take my dragon, go into the front of the water elementals, and then I take my regiment of goblin chariots and go into the flank. So no yellow bellied. I've got 16 attacks on 4s and 3s. So that's definitely deadly. My Hydra here that had the charge on the what are those? The fire elementals. Yeah, this is why I'm just not sure why move that far forward, because this Hydra has 14 attacks, and then my other one actually heals another 3 wounds, but ends up with, you know, a Hydra with 19 attacks. So it's just not the best move. Something to be aware of. But it does show off sort of what this formation does, which is I charge with this Hydra not hoping to kill off these fire elementals, but really just to hold them up. The Gemini formation plus the Goblin Blasters, that's just point denial, right? It's a piece of interdiction. I'm trying to turn off a part of the table for a couple of turns, and I could do a bunch of damage. Oh look, a scan was finished. I could do a bunch of damage, but that's not really what it's about. So in this case, I do get to do the damage though. I take my Cav and go into the Greater Earth Elemental. Now it is a little messy, because I have both of these Earth Elementals to deal with, but I saw a flank, see a flank, take a flank, so I went for it. My Chariots get the counter charge onto the Fire Elementals, along with a flank charge from the Heralds of Woe. You can tell that I was a Dark Elf player in Warhammer, because I'm like, oh yeah, Dark Riders in the flank, so good, but Heralds of Woe ain't no Dark Riders, so probably not the best plan. The other Heralds of Woe do, you know, something actually helpful and charge into this Druid. So that one's actually a really good move, in my opinion. Anytime you can take out a Druid in an elemental based fight, definitely go for it. At least remove the surge. These Heralds should have definitely just moved over and grabbed this Raze, or the objective token to raise it, but you know, I'm just not that smart. Bazuzu goes for revenge, charges back into the Greater Fire Elemental, hoping to kill it and overrun out of the line of sight of those Water Elementals. So I'm sacrificing one of the tokens by doing so, but you know, I don't think I can take another charge from my horde of Water Elementals, so yeah, I'm just gonna have to run away with Bazuzu. And here are the combats, so the Dragon and Goblin fight, the Hydra fight, the Knight fight, and then the Chariots and Heralds, and lastly Bazuzu. And I guess not lastly, because we've got more Heralds. So here is the end of the turn. Let's start on the left. The Dragon and the Goblins managed to kill off those Water Elementals. It is kind of funny, the Goblins do 0 wounds, which is, you know, it's something about playing Goblin units, even when you put out Ogre models for them, but you know they're Goblins inside, because when they do nothing, you're just like, yeah, it's Goblins, man. So, but the Kin Dragon just destroys those Water Elementals. I think I end up doing 9 or 10 wounds alone, and then I roll pretty well in the break test, and of course they're not inspired, so kill them off. Oh, and I fired my archers into this horde of Earth Elementals just because I have no other targets. I do 5 or 6 wounds. It looks like, you know, again, it looks like I did 5, but I'm not sure if we've done the Iron Resolve yet. So, yeah, the Hydra with 1,000,000 attacks goes into the Fire Elementals. I get them up to 11 damage, but unfortunately I do not nail the break test, so I roll a 5, or I guess a 5 or below, and yep, so they're still ready to go. It looks like I'm about to lose my first Hydra. And on the right, you can see my Cav end up taking out that Greater Earth Elemental and fall back. Now, this looks a little off. I wonder if this got jostled. But anyway, the point is to make it so both the Earth Elementals have to charge me in the front if they want to charge. I don't know if I can take both of those. That's, you know, 36 attacks on 4, so, you know, like 18 hits and 9 wounds, and I'm a 14-16. Not the best odds, but yeah, definitely taking them in the front, and I'm gonna bleed a little bit in this. Versus the Fire Elementals, yeah, I do 2 damage total, and that is definitely with the Chariots and not with the Heralds, so I definitely should have just gone for the objective. Always play the objective, guys, even when you think you have Dark Riders. The other Heralds end up doing 2 wounds to this Druid and manage to waver it. So just looking to do 1 wound to turn off the Surge, but 2 will do, or a waver will do. And finally, Bazuzu did end up killing the Greater fire elemental and regenning, I think 4 or 5 wounds again. That regen's really doing work, and then overrunning out of the line of sight of the water elementals. So moving on to turn 3 for the forces of nature. You can see my opponent is going for some counter charges. So we have the horde of fire elementals going into my Hydra. The other fire elemental, I think he actually had a charge onto my dragon. Maybe he was just out because it looks like he's backing up there. Both of the earth elementals go into the front of my knights. The fire elementals go back into the chariots, hoping to do better than last time. And yeah, then the water elementals just move over to grab this token, tying up the game because there's nothing I can do about it. And right here, yeah, so that combat, this one's definitely a real dicey one, but at least I'm inspired. This one, yeah, if I survive here, it'll be a miracle. And this is, what's happening here? Oh, here's the combats. What am I showing? Shooting? There's no shooting. I mean, there's this greater fire elemental, but maybe I'm showing off it did nothing. So here we go. The fire elementals, yep, we get a superfluous double one, so it's the best thing in the game. Doesn't matter. They end up tripling their damage from the last round, so I guess that's cool. But yeah, with 18 attacks on 4s and 2s, a little bit better than 3 damage, I think, is what you're hoping for. Definitely not hoping for the double one. And here is the end of the round. So you can see not only does my opponent double one this combat of nothing, but also rolls pretty poor here. Only does 6 wounds to my knights and does not waver them. So, oof, it's getting a little dicey. But thankfully, the water elementals do complete the mission and grab 1 objective. So it is currently tied 2-2. And we move on to turn 4. So turn 4, yeah, things are, let's walk it back here. So here's a dragon that can fly, and here's some earth elementals that are within 20. So yeah, the dragon just skips over these fire elementals, goes right for the earth elementals that are already damaged. They've got 4 or 5 damage on them. My goblin chariots have a flank charge onto this greater fire elemental, so you know, if they don't blow it like last time, that's probably bye-bye to them. The fire elementals here that have, I believe, 11 wounds on them are staring down my archer horde now, so I have a great target. And yeah, the heralds of woe go back into the fire elementals because, you know, why not? 10 out of 10, along with the chariots, of course. The other heralds of woe just use some nimble tricks to get within 3 of this objective to grab it, and Bazuzu goes for the kill on that druid. So at the end of this round, if my I guess as long as my archers kill off this horde, my goblin chariots will automatically raise this, but it would be great if they also killed this greater fire elemental. And here are the combats. So yeah, getting into the flank there, that's probably a little messy. Over here, the flank here, that's a little harder to deal with. I mean, come on, 2 hordes of earth elementals going into the front. I probably would have gone for it as well, especially with where my opponent was, but I guess that's why they have, you know, those shambling flank charges. Right here, yeah, I took my knights and went into the other combat because I didn't think I needed them and the dragon, and, you know, the knights could get lucky. Over here, getting into the fire elementals again, and Bazuzu, the mighty murderer. So yeah, I end up doing a ton of damage to these guys with my archers, and then I roll boxcars when I don't need it. So pretty funny. I love pictures like this. So yeah, end up killing off those fire elementals with a boxcar, and again, that is on the reroll. And here is the end of the turn. So starting on the left, you can see my goblins. Yep, they do quite a few points of damage. I mean, this greater fire elemental is up to 10. So at least they didn't do nothing, but they don't kill it. So I'm still upset with them. How dare they be goblins? My dragon just chomps down those earth elementals, reduces them to pebble, and overruns to just threaten the flank here. And really, it's just to threaten these water elementals. But my Cav do not do a whole lot to the Earth Elemental Horde, mostly because I went for the Bane Chant on my chariots to make sure I kill off the Fire Elementals, which I do. I actually don't roll that well. You can see this 7 here is the wounds on the Fire Elementals, so I just rolled a natural 10 plus, got rid of them. You know, better lucky than good. Bazuzu ends up killing off that druid, and I end up raising the token here, and I end up raising this token here. I just haven't moved it yet. So it is a 6-2 game at the end of, or the middle of turn 4. So moving on to my opponent's turn 4. The Water Elementals on the right here just turn to face the army. Not a whole lot else they can do. The Earth Elementals take a charge, hoping to finally finish off this cav. The Greater Fire Elemental has a countercharge into my Goblin Chariots, and that's about it. There's a Druid here that can heal too, I guess. Nothing else. Yep, this combat, you know, this could go the Goblin's way, but it's not super likely. I mean, 9 attacks. I think the Goblin Chariots are 12-14s, so. This is another one that I do not expect to work. It's a further 18 attacks on 4s and 4s, so you know, even 2 or 3 damage could spell the doom of these cav members. And here is the end of the turn. I end up, or my opponent ends up getting only a waiver onto my cav, so that's better than nothing. And the Goblin Chariots take only 4 wounds and pass whatever their break test is. So all hail Goblin Chariots, too good to remove. And we move on to turn 5. So turn 5, things are definitely looking dire for the forces of nature. Starting on the left, my Goblin Chariots have a counter charge into that Greater Fire Elemental. I just take my Hydra and run towards the center because it doesn't really matter. I have all my tokens, and the only thing that matters is stopping my opponent from getting theirs and holding the center. And in fact, just holding the center will do. So I get a flank charge with my dragon. I get a front charge with the knights because of that. Or no, I don't. They're wavered. Sorry, I just get a flank charge with my dragon and a flank charge with Bazuzu. To get that flank charge with Bazuzu, though, I had to move my Heralds of Woe, so they're not really doing a whole lot. I couldn't get 3 units into the Water Elementals, but I do end up getting my Chariots and more Heralds of Woe. Always a good sign when they're in combat. My ASB just moves forward to Inspire and give Crush 1 to the Chariots there. And I think my archers, yeah, my archers don't have a target. I could have moved them, you know, I just didn't think it was relevant. So moving on, this little 3 back here, that is for my Hydra. That's a great arrow. For my Hydra, it's down to 3 wounds. Taken from 11, so regen's really doing work. Yep, we've got this charge, we've got this charge. It looks like the knights charged, but trust me, they did not. And over here, the might of the Goblin Chariots finish them off. And yep, so I go into this guy, I do 1 or 2 damage, and I boxcar it. So again, that's on the reroll. That's the second boxcar of the game. And both of them are by me, so you know, it's all skill, guys. It's all skill. And in the center, yeah, the dragon in the flank plus Bazuzu do what they do and easily kill off that horde of Earth Elementals, while the Chariots, and I'm gonna actually put this on the Heralds of Woe, they definitely did all the work. The Chariots did nothing. They kill off the Water Elementals, and my opponent is left with just a Druid with heal 2. So yeah, this is the concede. I think my opponent went for a cheeky little charge here, taking the Druid into the Goblin Chariots, just hoping to finish them off. But that is the game. So it ends up being, I have all 3 of my tokens. So I've got 1, 2, 3, which equals 6 VP. Plus I've got 1 VP for holding the center. So I end up with 7 VP to the Forces of Nature 1, which equals 2 VP. So 7-2 victory for the kin. yeah, I actually do. I enjoy playing this list. I might put together the models for it. I do have them. I mean, it looks like I don't because I never do this, but you know, we're all busy. We've all got stuff to do, and I like to play a lot of different armies and a lot of different games. So, yeah, I do have the models for this, and I could put them out. I don't know. I'm not really looking to play Kin all year though, especially as Third Ed is just around the corner, and Kin are probably getting some pretty big rewrites. So I'm a little hesitant to invest too much in them, but I do enjoy playing this list, so I'll be doing so in the future. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until next time, bye.